Ambient Jukebox here. Today I'm going to be doing a top 10 list, something that nobody has ever done before. There's not thousands of people online already doing this, and I'm about to talk about a subject that no one has ever dared discuss before either. And by that I mean I'm going to be ranking my top 10 favorite progressive rock bands, or just progressive bands in general. Some of you are going to not be fond of this list because maybe some of these bands don't necessarily make the mark for what you view to be progressive music. If you don't like them, tell me. Tell me in the comments. Write your congressman. Shoot an arrow through my temple and take me out of my misery. All right, number 10, Quiet Sun. Quiet Sun is a very newfound band for me. They came out of the Canterbury scene as far as I'm concerned, and they had everybody from Phil Manzara from Roxy Music, I'm pretty sure it was his band, Bill McCormick on bass, and I haven't listened to much Matching Mole, but they're another Canterbury band, and then Charles Hayward, who would go on to be in, he would found the band This Heat. I think this is a really cool, underrated band. I don't really see this band get discussed on a lot of forums. Now, maybe in Canterbury music specifically, or Canterbury prog, yeah, I'm sure they do. That's why I'm special and I'm talking about it. I like this band because there's elements of prior Canterbury acts like Soft Machine, or like maybe like Egg, stuff like that. But it's also got like a heavier edge to it. It feels like there's just more of a gut punch, and the rhythm section of Charles Hayward and Bill McCormick are incredible. And I'm also pretty sure Bill McCormick ended up working with Brian Eno and Phil Manzara. This is a music dorks like Wet Dream pretty much, yeah, really cool stuff. Number 9, Goblin. The bass lines are really clunky, really chunky, really up in the mix. Fabio Pignatelli, really great bass player. Claudio Simonetti, who is kind of like he's like a more distant Rick Wakeman, if that makes any sense. One of my favorite Goblin songs is Deep Shadows. It depends which version you're listening to, but it's basically it's a jam band song. It's got a guitar solo, it's got an excellent bass solo, super dissonant, a lot of tritones, the weirdest, stupidest sounding synthesizer I've ever heard. Woo, 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 woo. It goes to good effect in the film Deep Red. They also did a score for Phenomena, Tenebrae, Suspiria. They're usually one of my favorite soundtrack artists. Number 8, Nectar, or Nectar as I've heard pronounced before. I think I listened to more Nectar before I listened to Yes, because when I used to get stoned, I would go in my YouTube-related searches, and there was A Tab in the Ocean, and I listened to that opening track so many times. I tried to show people it, and everybody told me either it's too long or it sounds like Queen, and I don't agree with either of those sentiments. I think it's a beautiful piece of music. It's got one of the best riffs I've ever heard. And I think some of their works are pretty diverse, too. We have, A Tab in the Ocean, obviously. That's got a bunch of really long compositions. But then you have shorter, almost more poppier songs like Down to Earth. You got Show Me the Way, which is probably my favorite Nectar song ever. It's one of my favorite songs in general. But then you also have Nelly the Elephant with the horns and stuff like that. Remember the Future, which is a concept album about an alien that I think comes to Earth and is like, he befriends a child, but then he gets crucified. It's got this kind of almost Christian message in it, I suppose. That's got longer compositions. In fact, I think it's just Remember the Future Part 1 and then Part 2. Ian Curtis from Joy Division apparently is a fan. I'm probably sipping the Kool-Aid of believing everything on the internet, but there's a picture of young Ian Curtis with a Nectar shirt, and I'm like, well, shit. I showed a lot of my friends in college Nectar because that music touched me very much. Even though they were known as a B-grade, C-grade prog band, I've always had a soft spot. The most original? No. But Groovy, fun to listen to, and catchy. Yes, absolutely. Number 7. Now, the ranking of this one, I think, might hurt some people, but it's not. I don't have them ranked lower on the list because I think they're inferior. These guys may be if we're talking about the musicianship of this band, they would probably be number 1. Gentle Giant on number 7. And I haven't even heard all their material, but the material I have heard is astonishing. My first introduction to Gentle Giant was hearing the album Three Friends. I got that record, just the song alone, Prologue. The harmonies, the really weird time signatures, the drums are really funky, the organ and the bass are having a conversation. Years later, I would hear Proclamation, which apparently has been sampled by Travis Scott, if I'm not mistaken. That's wild. I never thought I would hear a stadium of predominantly black youth singing Proclamation. That is insane. You got Freehand, you've got Acquiring the Taste. Insanely complex, but it's also very hummable. All those vocal harmonies, of the brothers of Ray Shulman and Derek Shulman are really rich. And then everybody in that band played a second instrument, probably heavily classically trained. And they're the one band that really does the medieval stuff in prog rock that I actually really like. I've never been a big Jethro Tull fan. Number 6, once again, musical skill, they would be either 2 or 1 if we were going by just that. It's part of history. They have one of the best bass players of all time. They also had one of the best drummers of all time, Bill Bruford. Chris Squire, you already know it. Yes, driving to school with Close to the Edge in my CD player and just going through that whole journey, cranked up on coffee, and then going to band practice with that music still in my head. I mean, just nuts. I mean, what? Close to the Edge and You and I, Siberian Catru? Is that it? Yeah, all of those are insane songs. I think Siberian Catru is one of the best things they ever did. And then, Fragile has South Side of the Sky, Dumbass Cans and Brams. I'm not going to talk about that. Once again, I'm accidentally contrarian. I heard Tales from Topographic Oceans before I heard all of Fragile. Don't ask me how that happened. I think I just happened to find that record. That is a bloated album. I don't think that album needs to be 2 hours or whatever. But man, Revealing Science of God, the part where it's xylophones and a bass solo or whatever, even their poppy stuff with, Trevor Horn is really, really good. Number 5, Gong, 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 is probably the silliest band besides, Frank Zappa's Mothers of Invention that can make this good of music. And I think half of them are French, half of them are British, to my understanding. I mean, Dave Allen was, I'm pretty sure, Australian. Insane group of continental pot-smoking maniacs that loved to cast a whimsical fairy tale and make it super funky. Like the rhythm section always sounded very black influence to me. Angel's Egg. I once had a friend describe Angel's Egg. I mean, if you're into the stoner stuff, he described that music as sativa music. I mean, the arrangements, everything from Master Builder, Oily Way, and then a lot of stuff on Cambermint Electric. I Am Your Animal. I mean, that stuff is sinister. I mean, really, really intense music that, if you show that to someone who is having a bad trip, there would be no happiness. A lot of them don't know about Gong, and the Canterbury scene is underlooked. Number 4, Soft Machine. I'm already assuming that some people don't view Soft Machine as progressive rock. You may not even view it as rock or having any instance of rock in it, but I think it's progressive music. I think it's more than just jazz or jazz fusion. Robert Wyatt making beautiful melodies with his voice and singing just heartfelt lyrics like Moon and June, but just drumming like a maniac. But also not as maybe technically proficient as someone like Bill Bruford. It's almost like he had the energy of Rat Scabies from The Damned, but had the cozy Englishman stature of somebody like Bill Bruford. I mean, he's just super unique. Mike Ratledge just passed away, which kind of inspired this video. I mean, look up the performance of them in like 1969 where they're doing Moon in June. And then the bass has also got fuzz. There's no guitar. And, I mean, God bless Alan Holdsworth, but I think, and then they kind of became more average jazz fusion. If you want a mix of Robert Wyatt still being in the band, but a little bit of that jazz fusion stuff, check out 4. That's a good album. And, of course, 3rd is classic. Next, we have Van der Graaf Generator. And I thought they were German for a little bit because I'm an idiot. I didn't even know what a Van der Graaf generator was. Just kind of, I see a lot of people in music taking influences from Peter Hamill. Everybody from Johnny Rotten, Ariel Pink. I mean, Peter Hamill sings like a mad scientist or the human the personification of a vulture. I mean, everything from Man Erg to H2 He, who is the only one. Like, Arrow is probably my favorite song by them, but it has that vaudeville nature to it, but with some really intense clavinet. I think it's a clavinet playing on that track. The H2 He, who is the only one, whatever that album is, the one that looks like it has testicles on it. That was my introduction. And then I eventually heard, Pawn Hearts. It's distinctly their sound. I don't think they were trying to rip off Jethro Tull or Yes. They have their own thing. It seems a little bit more cynical. Or Pete Hamill is a fantastic songwriter. My friend turned me on to some of his solo work, and I'm still amazed at the way that guy writes. I mean, even new Van der Graaf stuff like Inference Patterns. Okay, we're moving on to number 2. Now, this is an obvious one. A lot has been said about this band. There's a documentary about this band for their 50th anniversary. King Crimson. Everybody knows the funny man, screaming face. Everybody knows, actually not everybody knows. There's the 70s era with John Wetton, who's my favorite bassist in King Crimson. That lineup, that's the best King Crimson lineup. I think In the Court all the way through is a more consistently great album than, say, Lark's Tongues and Aspic, but Lark's Tongues and Aspic Part 2 I like more than any song on In Court of the Crimson King. It's just, it's the heaviest thing of that era. Starless, of course. You have, what's that one song where he says the F word? The Great Deceiver. Before going on to our last pick, I want to mention a few bands that didn't make the list, but do have a special place in my heart. Rush is still one of my favorite bands of the 80s, even though they started in the 70s. But I don't know. I just think of them more in the classic rock frame of mind than I do progressive. I mean, even stuff off of Moving Pictures and Permanent Waves are progressive. I don't know. I don't usually think of them in the same category as Van der Graaf Generator or Gentle Giant. But I love that band, obviously. Hawkwind, Amon 2, Genesis, early Genesis with Peter Gabriel especially, the Italian band Aria, the Italian band Semiramis, Porcupine Tree, Mars Volta. These are all really good bands that didn't cut the list just because I either don't listen to them as much or I just don't see them in the same frame. I almost did Mars Volta just because I think they're one of the best prog bands of the last 2 decades. See them live if you can. We've reached our number 1 spot. Are you ready to get rocked? Are you ready to get prog rocked? Are you ready to disagree with my number 1 pick and comment below that I should kill myself? The number 1 prog band for me is Magma. Magma. Yes, Magma. A band who invented their own vernacular, their own language, their own culture. They invented their own musical style. Kumbaya. What is Kumbaya? Well, I can't explain it, so watch some other video about it. But I'll say this. The guy who runs the band is a madman, a lunatic, stark raving mad, but very well read. Basically started as a jazz drummer, loves John Coltrane, and he started running this band in the 70s. There's like 16, 17 members or something like that, and lineup changes. This guy can play drums like a motherfucker. This Christian Vander, which is his name, is probably one of the greatest living drummers still alive today. I think he is as good as Neil Peart. Fight me. Yeah, and also his vocal registers are inhuman. This music really isn't for human consumption. I'll sound like a Tool fan for a minute.
You gotta have a very high understanding of molecular structures to understand it.
The song Kumbaya off their debut, stuff from Attack, last 7 minutes, the song where it's like gospel influenced. I mean, most of their songs I can't name by name, is they're in some Kumbaya language. You owe it to yourself to look up any live performance of Magma you can find, especially De Futura. And that's one of the best examples of a band constantly speeding up, but they never lose the groove. Some bands, when they get really, really fast, it's fast, but it loses the musicality to me. This never happens in De Futura. Every second of that song is rich honey. It is so pure concentrated. It's like an expressway to every synapse in your brain. It is so beautiful. I have cried many times listening to it. It's one of the greatest pieces of music ever. I put it up there with Tchaikovsky. I put it up there with Wagner. I put it up there with Stockhausen. It's so good. Magma is one of the greatest bands ever in general. Once again, it's the Prog-band, besides Hawkwind and Vandergraaf Generator, that seems to proliferate in the punk circles. You always see punk guys with Magma shirts because they know what the fuck's up. And because I don't know of any band that sounds like them. I don't know of any band that plays like them. I don't know of material of that ilk that makes me feel the way Magma does. And if that's not the top one on your list, I'm so happy that, you know, whatever your favorite prog band is, it's touched you in the way that Magma has touched my heart. There's not a word for it. It's just, you just watch it and you go, holy shit. And you sit there with piss in your boots because you can't believe what you're seeing and hearing. Thank you guys for tuning in. Anybody who watches these videos, I strongly appreciate it. Share with your friends. Share with your music elitist friends. Share with your friends who only listen to Sabrina Carpenter. Share with anyone who will listen, because I sure as hell appreciate it. You guys have been a great audience, and I'm going to see you next time. J-Man out!